Hello, everybody. And so tonight we're going to record some questions that Victoria and I have been asked by our significant audiences, so from our groups, and we just thought we'd put it out to a wider audience in case anybody was struggling with some of these issues and that we can help with in turn. So, hello, Victoria, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. So it's weird recording one of these, isn't it, when we've had a chat beforehand?
I know. It's nice. I'm liking this informal vibe, though.
Yeah, definitely. Don't get anything formal with me. I'm from Yorkshire.
Thanks so much for agreeing to do this, Michelle. So I know we've said we're going to do a bit of that Q&A to each other, aren't we? So this is an opportunity once a month or so where we'll collect any questions from our groups and Q&A each other to put forward. Wow, they're great. Am I okay to start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Great. So the first question I have for you, Michelle, comes from someone who was just very blunt and upfront when I said, what do you want to ask a nutritionist? And she just said, what do you eat? So could she have a snapshot, please? Could we have a snapshot from you of a typical day in your life? What do you eat?
Yeah, sure. I mean, with me, my typical day will vary as to what time of the month it is, because I follow a plan that follows my cycle.
Right.
So when I'm in the run up to my period, my diet, my day would look a lot different to when it was after the period.
Right.
So in the run up to my period, I would generally, I don't have breakfast because I fast. So I fast from, start eating at 1 o'clock and I finish eating at 8 o'clock. So I eat my calories during the time from 1 to 8, just because for me, that's what my body likes. It likes the rest from food. Not everybody should do that, by the way. It's just what works for me. But yeah, I start eating at 1 o'clock. So if I'm in my run up to my period, what I would have is maybe a piece of chicken with some quinoa and some maybe green leaves, something like that. Keeping it quite, keeping it without any starchy carbohydrates, because in the run up to my period, that inflammation would be caused by that in my case again. And then I would have maybe a snack mid-afternoon of some carrots and hummus, something like that. And then for dinner, what could I have for dinner? Probably have a piece of fish, piece of salmon with some broccoli, carrots, and if I was still feeling a little bit hungry, I'd probably add a little bit of brown rice in there, but I don't always do that. And then I'll finish off with a coconut yogurt, something like that. Now, in the time after my period, it isn't too dissimilar, but if I fancied then adding in anything like potatoes or anything like that, I'd add that in then, because I can tolerate it a lot better.
Yeah.
Or I would add in maybe some, again, I don't eat a lot of pasta because that will inflame me, make me bloated, but I will add in more things like lentil pasta and things that are a little bit more carby. But definitely in the run up to period, I keep it very low salt, low sugar, no starchy carbohydrates, and no alcohol. And that is again the difference. I don't drink a lot, but I would be able to have something to drink alcohol wise in the time after my period and not in the time running up to it or during.
Great, thanks. So it sounds like as well as like you've been aware of like the macronutrients, as in like the carbs and protein stuff, sounds like you generally quite minimal processed stuff, do you? Would you have pizza now and again?
Yeah, but for me, again, I've got to be very careful of where I get that pizza from. If it's quite greasy, if the dough is not freshly made, then I will suffer. Regardless of what time of the month it is. I wouldn't have a pizza in the run up to my period anyway, but regardless of that, outside of that time, I would suffer again with bloating and like really not feeling very well because I have intolerances. But again, if I wanted to have a pizza, I would have something that's quite freshly made. I like Gusto pizza or Pizza Express, which are quite, the dough is a lot fresher, if that makes sense. And I also would make my own as well. So I'd buy a shop bought, normally a gluten-free or wheat-free pizza base, and then add my own toppings so that I know what's going on it.
Cool. Well, thank you.
But yeah, generally try and stay away from anything processed, because in general, it's not that great for you.
It's going to bloat. Yeah. And the next question actually builds on a little bit from that, because it's again talking about hormonal cravings. So this person asked whether you had any suggestions for alternatives when she's really craving just a huge bar of chocolate at that time of the month. What would you do? And do you have any suggestions, any alternatives?
Well, I know that you're probably going to chip in on this one as
I've
well.
had some thoughts on this one too.
Yeah, it's a funny one, is cravings, because I often find with hormones, the hormones are telling you actually what you need. So if you're craving that chocolate, generally what will be happening is either you're craving the sugar or you're craving the iron. So I mean, for me, I would say have the chocolate, but don't go overboard on it. I would say don't eat too much, so it's going to have the adverse effects on you.
I think that's what this lady was getting at, was kind of like at that time it's like a huge bar of chocolate is what she's got. So yeah, trying to work on being able to slow down. That's where I was thinking about it, like slowing down, enjoying that chocolate, but maybe taking it by piece.
Exactly.
And
I would say try and like go for the dark chocolate varieties as well. I know people always go, oh, I don't, but it's better for you, and it's going to hit that spot a lot quicker, I think, than if you were trying to like have the milk chocolates just laden with loads and loads of sugar. It's going to make you want more and more and more. But if you have dark chocolate, it can satisfy that need, I think, but then you won't want as much because you can't eat as much dark chocolate, I don't think.
And I've realized it really truly is true that you can adjust your taste buds. So if it might take, I don't know, a month's worth of kind of forcing yourself to have the dark chocolate, but then after a while that's what you start to want, and you get a lot of enjoyment out of it. So I would tell anyone to hang in there and try it, that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like ultimately the message there is to not to necessarily worry too much about denying yourself what you're craving, but just to slow down, have a little bit of it, and maybe experiment with a darker chocolate rather than a milk chocolate.
Definitely. And also as well, what I find is that if it is the iron that you're needing, because obviously while you're having hormones and things, and especially if you're on your period, you can be losing iron, so you want to replenish that iron. Just make sure that your diet is rich in things like spinach. Adding lots of green leafy veg in there can really help with that craving, so it's not really as apparent. So the little techniques like that you can do, again, in the run up to the period, I will always add in lots of leafy greens so that it might help with that craving. But again, I'm guilty of eating chocolate as well during that time.
We shouldn't feel guilty. It's interesting. I'm going to pick you up on your language there, because we shouldn't be. It's nothing to be guilty about. We can enjoy a bit of chocolate and it's fine. And there might be something about that is about soothing the emotional side of you in that experience, and that's okay too when it's done with awareness and done kind of like considered. Okay, so last question from me to you, and then we'll swap chairs as such. So Paula in our group was interested in using this measure of our resting heart rate. So that's a measure that a lot of people maybe have a measurement of some kind of fitness monitor, and using that to monitor her fitness level. And we all kind of, it's widely known, isn't it, that exercise is going to impact on our resting heart rate. But she was intrigued to know whether you think nutrition would impact on that at all. What do you think?
Diet won't necessarily affect your target heart rate, but it can definitely affect your resting heart rate. Exercise, healthy eating, getting enough sleep is going to help with that resting heart rate. It's going to be lower, much lower than somebody that actually will be sat sedentary. So it's always going to be great having the right diet, having the right exercise, having the right sleep to lower that resting heart rate. What I would say is that what can raise your resting heart rate are things like caffeine, high salt, high sugar, alcohol. All of these things can affect your resting heart rate. So if you're looking to adjust that resting heart rate to get it lower, then what I would say is to try and avoid things like that.
Yeah, makes sense.
But what has been proven to help with this is having a lower calorie diet. So not going too low, but having not going too high on your calories. Vegetarian diets have been proven to lower, but a good vegetarian diet, there's a difference. Lower your salt, lower your sugar, and obviously lower the alcohol and caffeine intake. That's what has been proven to help with a lower resting heart rate. And quite interestingly, the higher your resting heart rate, the faster you'll reach your target heart rate, which in workout is not what you want, because it's going to limit what you actually can do, and then that's going to put strain on the heart. So you want in your resting heart rate to be as low as possible, so then when you get to your target, you've got a bigger kind of scale in between. So definitely looking at what you eat can help with the resting heart rate for sure.
Cool. I did have a hypothesis that crossed my mind when Paul put this question up, and I thought, could it be something to do with inflammation? So all those things you're saying are things that are going to raise the inflammation in your body, aren't they? And I thought, if your body's having to work harder because it's dealing with inflammation, that might make, that was where my mind went. So that's interesting.
Yeah, it's the right thought process. I mean, I'm not very scientific or very biological, but it does make sense. And all of these things that obviously in research they've found that will affect the resting heart rate are things that do cause inflammation for sure.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you for answering the questions from my group.
Yeah, I hope that helps for the ladies that ask those questions.
I'm sure it will.
So swapping over my question to you. So what I've been asked is, how long would it take to change somebody's thought process when they've had these years and years of having a diet mindset, so being on a diet and having these ingrained beliefs about what they should be doing with their food and how they look at it?
Yeah. Okay, well, the first thing that comes to my mind when you ask that is a lady I worked with last year, who I would say is possibly the most significant and quickest turnaround and change I've come across. And I had 3 sessions with this lady, and she actually got so much from it that she did me a little Zoom video like we're doing now, actually, that she's happy for me to give out and share with prospective clients. I don't put it out there widely. She's asked me not to necessarily put it out there on the web for everyone to see, but she's happy for me to share it with people because she found it so enlightening to have just these 3 sessions was all it took for her to completely overhaul what had been a lifetime of dieting misery. And she got to a place where she just felt completely free from all that, on a new track of much more like intuitively eating way of thinking. And she'd overturned her, given her diet an overhaul, and was just making choices that were right for her, taking her down that route. So that was 3 sessions worth of work. But actually, and
that 3 sessions over how long a period of time?
Would they have been weekly sessions? Either weekly sessions or fortnightly sessions. I always work in that kind
3
of time
to 6
frame.
weeks.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Saying that, I believe, and the therapies that I use are designed and proven to show effect from just 1 session.
Okay.
So just 1 session and 1 conversation can be enough to at least start and trigger that process of change and take someone down a different direction.
Yeah.
So there's specific tools that I might use in an initial chat conversation with someone where I'm pulling out certain stuff and asking certain prompt questions that are all designed to elicit change and help someone move on to that next stage of change, and help someone identify what needs to change and what small step they can start with, and gives them tools to overcome barriers and hurdles. And that can all come out of a single conversation if necessary. So there's something to be had with any conversation around this stuff.
I mean, something that I've read, I can never remember the exact figures, but it says that it takes so many days to change a bad habit.
Yeah, I must admit, I'm not really a lover of those kind of stats. They're often not really backed up by very much science. But I know there is a lot of anecdotal or those kind of popular stats out there around 21 days to change a habit and all that kind of stuff.
So that's not obviously true in the case of like breaking these habits that you've had in your brain for a lifetime.
I don't think it's about, I don't think it's about just repeating. Well, we know science tells us it's not about just repeating a new behavior, and there's a lot more to it than that. But yeah, so on average I tend to work with someone between 3 and 6 sessions is my average, so over the space of like a month or 2.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really effective, and that's the same across all my work as a clinical psychologist, where the average number of times I see someone is probably 6 times across, like I say, between either weekly or fortnightly, and to help them deal with all sorts of stuff from the past. So therapy doesn't have to be like a long drawn out projected process, I suppose, is the key message here.
That's really great to know, because a lot of people, when they think of like going into something like this, they think it's going to take a long time. So if it can be done in that short space of time, then I think that's absolutely marvelous.
And that's not to say that people don't experience like blips or like setbacks in the future, but what they should get from therapy, and a good therapist will always do this, is skills that's embedded within them to deal with whatever comes up in life. So that whatever comes up that might cause a bit of a deviation back to old habits for a while, the ideal is that is short-lived and you know how to get back on track again relatively smoothly.
Brilliant. Which takes me on to my next question, and this is probably going to be like a red flag to a book. What are your thoughts on slimming clubs?
Actually, I have more time for them than you might think. As in, I think they can play a part in someone's journey at a certain time in their life. So what I was talking about before about people being at a place of wanting to make change, you've got to be at a certain point, when you're ready to make that change. If you're not quite there yet, and actually the most important thing is short-term weight loss for some reason, be it a health reason, or I don't know, I can't think of any other reason why that would be important other than your health. But if there's some reason why you need to lose weight, and that's really important for a short-term goal, then they can play a part. There's a lot to be said in the motivation of the group. You're going along there, you're doing stuff with other people, it keeps you going, you're held accountable, and we all know how important that can be. So they can play a part in someone's weight loss journey, and this is a huge but, and this is why I don't go to one anymore, and why I do everything I do, which is that they're never going to last. They're never going to help you make change at that deeper level. And that's what frustrates me sometimes about the ones that are out there making profit, because they are a business, which is they want people's business forever. So it's kind of like that you're going to get that if that's all that people do is go to those. And there's also a whole load of psychological stuff tied up that can be quite damaging about going to them, about your whole value being placed on what you are on the scales. And I know these days, because I've been to them, in recent years myself, and I know the leaders and the ethos, they try and say, oh, it's not about that, it's about wellness overall. We're not all just about the scales. Don't worry if the scales haven't budged like you'd hoped. It's okay, it doesn't matter. They can say that till the blue in the face, but at the end of the day, you're paying your money to go and stand on the scales, so that is always going to undermine anything they say. They can couch it as nicely as possible, but I'm sorry, that's what everyone's there for.
The whole model is built on what Scale said, isn't it? Like, you will not have to pay if you get to this weight. It's I just feel like that myself, and like you, I feel it's got a good place because it can help with people's accountability, and that they're not on their own, and that camaraderie. I think that's a really great thing about them. But I do question some of the damaging effects it has had on people with what they promote.
Sorry, you're just breaking up a bit there.
I'm sorry.
You're back now. So as I say, I'm not all dooming on them. But for the longer term, I would like to always see them as just a step in someone's journey, and I would hope that someone might get to a point where they're ready to internalize this stuff. Their motivation can come from within there, and their drive from within, rather than needing it to be from an external accountability source.
So important, most definitely, so important. Is there anything else you'd like to cover this evening?
No, I think we should wrap it up there, because we've been chatting twice as long as we'd hoped.
Probably, always do. Always do when we get together.
I know. So let's leave that there, and we can come back again in the future with any more questions.
Definitely. And if anybody out there has any questions for either of us, then please comment in the box below, and we will be sure to cover it in one of our next little get-togethers.
Yes, great.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.